Finding my dad's secret phone was devastating, but finding out who he was texting was somehow worse. I found it by accident. I was looking for my charger in his home office when I knocked over a stack of business magazines. The phone slid out from behind them, tucked into a leather portfolio I'd never seen before. It was an iPhone with a cracked screen, password protected. The kind of phone you keep hidden. I knew my dad's passwords. He used the same 4 digits for everything, our old house number from when I was little. My fingers hesitated over the screen. Part of me wanted to put it back, pretend I'd never seen it. But I'd been suspicious for months, watching him act increasingly strange. The late-night calls in the garage, the way he'd close browser windows when I walked into a room, the messages loaded immediately, hundreds of them, going back 11 months. I expected to find some affair, some mistress half his age with a name like Brittany or Amber. What I found was so much stranger. He was texting my uncle, not just casual family chat. These were detailed clinical discussions about my mom's health, her medications, her daily routine, things that seemed caring at first, until I scrolled further. They were coordinating something, planning something that made my stomach turn. The new pills are working faster than expected, my uncle had written on Tuesday. She's sleeping 14 hours now, barely making it through breakfast. Good, my dad replied. Dr. Harrison says we can increase the dosage next week. How much longer until the cognitive decline is noticeable to others? My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. My mom had been sick for 8 months. Chronic fatigue, memory problems, confusion that seemed to get worse every day. We'd seen multiple specialists, tried countless medications. No one could figure out what was wrong with her. Meanwhile, my dad played the devoted husband so perfectly. He took her to every appointment, managed all her medications with careful spreadsheets, posted inspirational quotes about caregiving on his Facebook that got hundreds of likes. I kept reading, my breath coming in short gasps. The messages detailed everything. How my uncle, a pharmacist at the biggest chain in town, had been mixing sedatives into her multivitamins. How Dr. Harrison, my dad's golf buddy for 15 years, had been falsifying medical records to show progressive neurological decline. How they'd slowly been making my mom incompetent enough to require a conservatorship. Once we have legal control, the house transfer should be clean, my uncle wrote last month. I'll handle the probate paperwork. You'll have to remarry quickly, though. Cynthia's already asked about the timeline. Cynthia, my dad's secretary at the law firm, the woman who'd been bringing us casseroles every Sunday and offering to help with mom's care, the woman who'd shown up to our house wearing perfume that cost more than our mortgage payment. There were photos attached to some messages, legal documents, bank statements, property deeds. My dad and uncle had already started transferring assets, hiding money in accounts my mom didn't know existed. They'd been planning this for over a year. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, familiar. My dad was coming up from the garage. I shoved the phone back behind the magazines, my pulse hammering in my throat. The portfolio slipped and I barely caught it, repositioning everything exactly how I'd found it. He appeared in the doorway, still in his suit from work, tie loosened. His expression was casual, but something watchful lurked in his eyes. What are you doing in here? He asked, his tone friendly but his eyes sharp. Looking for my charger, I managed. Found it in my room, though. He nodded slowly, then stepped inside and locked the door behind him. The click echoed through the office. We'd never locked doors in our house. Ever. You're a terrible liar, sweetheart, he said softly, taking another step toward me. Just like your mother. My back hit his desk. There was nowhere else to go. He stood between me and the door, his hands in his pockets like we were having a casual conversation. But his eyes had gone cold in a way I'd never seen before. How much did you read? He asked. I considered lying, considered pretending I had no idea what he was talking about. But the look on his face told me he already knew. Enough, I whispered. He laughed, actually laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. You know what's funny? He said, moving closer. Your mom used to snoop through my things too. That's how I knew she'd never be smart enough to figure anything out. But you always were sharper than her. You're poisoning her, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. You and Uncle and Dr. Harrison. You're making her sick on purpose. Poisoning is such a harsh word, he said, examining his fingernails. We're simply helping her transition into a more manageable state. Your mom has assets, properties from her parents. She never wanted to put my name on anything. Said she wanted to keep things separate after 20 years of marriage. So you decided to kill her? No one's killing anyone, he said, annoyed now. The plan is for her to require care, legal guardianship. Then eventually, when the stress becomes too much, she'll slip away peacefully. Natural causes. Happens all the time with neurological conditions. I felt bile rising in my throat. This was my father. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd come to every soccer game, who'd cried at my high school graduation. Cynthia and I have been planning our future for 2 years now, he continued. Your mom just refuses to let go. She won't divorce me, won't sign anything over. So we had to get creative. I'm going to tell everyone, I said. The police, a lawyer. I have evidence. He smiled, actually smiled. No, you don't. I have the phone. And even if you somehow got screenshots, do you think anyone would believe you? I'm a respected attorney. Your uncle is a pillar of the community. Dr. Harrison has been practicing medicine for 30 years. You're a 19-year-old girl who's been struggling in college, according to your transcript. Who's going to believe your conspiracy theory? He was right, and we both knew it. Without that phone, I had nothing but my word against 3 established men. Here's what's going to happen, he said, pulling the phone from behind the magazines. He must have seen me put it back. You're going to forget everything you saw. You're going to go back to school, focus on your classes, and let the adults handle adult situations. Your mom is sick. She's getting sicker. And when she eventually passes, you'll inherit your share of the estate, just like we planned. And if I don't forget, His expression hardened. Then maybe you'll develop some of your mother's symptoms. Confusion, memory problems, difficulty focusing. Dr. Harrison already has your medical records from when you were a teenager. Depression, anxiety. It wouldn't be hard to argue you're having a mental health crisis, especially if you start making wild accusations about your own family. The threat hung in the air between us. He was telling me he'd do to me what he was doing to my mom, turn me into someone no one would believe, then make me disappear. Get out of my office, he said, unlocking the door, and think very carefully about your next move. I walked past him on shaking legs, his cologne making me dizzy, or maybe it was terror. In the hallway, I could hear my mom downstairs, humming off-key in the kitchen, making dinner for a man who was slowly killing her. I locked myself in my bedroom and tried to think. My hands were still trembling as I grabbed my laptop. I needed evidence. Real evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. But the phone was gone. The messages were gone. I had nothing but my word, and my dad had just made it clear how little that was worth. Then I remembered something. My mom's medical records. If Dr. Harrison was falsifying reports, there might be discrepancies. Test results that didn't match symptoms. Medications that didn't make sense. I'd been to enough appointments with her to know something felt off about her diagnosis. I spent the next 4 hours researching neurological conditions, medications, side effects, cross-referencing everything with what I remembered from my mom's appointments. And that's when I found it. The drug my uncle was supposedly mixing into her vitamins. It was a powerful sedative, the kind used for severe psychiatric disorders. Long-term use caused exactly the symptoms my mom was experiencing. Fatigue, confusion, memory loss. But it also showed up in blood tests. Distinctly, unmistakably. I checked my mom's medical portal. Dr. Harrison had ordered blood work every month, supposedly to monitor her condition, but I couldn't find the actual results anywhere. Just notes saying, levels normal or within acceptable range. That was my evidence. Or it could be if I could get my mom's blood tested by a different doctor, someone who wasn't in on the plan. The next morning, I waited until my dad left for work. He'd been watching me at breakfast, studying my face for signs of what I might do. I kept my expression neutral, ate my cereal, made small talk about my classes, played the obedient daughter who knew her place. When his car pulled out of the driveway, I went to find my mom. She was in the living room, staring at the television with unfocused eyes. A morning show played, but I doubted she was really watching it. "Mom," I said gently, sitting beside her. She turned to me slowly, her movements sluggish. The woman who used to run marathons, who'd built her own successful marketing company, now struggled to follow a simple conversation. "Hi, honey," she said, smiling. "How was school?" I'd graduated high school 2 years ago, another sign of how bad things had gotten. "Mom, I need to take you to the doctor," I said. "I just went to the doctor," she said, confused. "Dr. Harrison said I'm doing fine." "I know, but I want to get a second opinion. There's a specialist I found online who might be able to help." She looked uncertain, the way she did about everything now. The woman who used to make decisions about million-dollar contracts couldn't choose what to have for breakfast anymore. "Your father handles all my medical stuff now," she said. "Maybe ask him first?" "It's a surprise," I said quickly. "For Dad. To show him we're taking your health seriously." That seemed to satisfy her. 30 minutes later, I had her in my car, driving to an urgent care clinic on the other side of town, somewhere my dad and his friends had no connections. The doctor there was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. I explained that my mom had been experiencing symptoms for months, that we wanted comprehensive blood work done to rule out various conditions. I made sure to mention we wanted to test for everything, including any unusual substances or medications. He agreed, took blood, urine, even a hair sample for extended drug screening, said the results would be ready in 2 days. Getting my mom back home was harder than getting her out. She was tired, confused about where we'd been. I told her we'd gone to the pharmacy, picked up her prescriptions. She nodded, accepting it without question. That evening, my dad pulled me aside after dinner. "Your mom said you took her somewhere today," he said, his voice calm, but his jaw tight. "Just to get her prescriptions." I lied. "The pharmacy was backed up, so it took forever." He studied my face for a long moment. "Her prescriptions are delivered," he said slowly. "We haven't picked them up in person for months." My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten. "Right," I said, trying to recover. "I meant her vitamins, from that health store she likes." Another lie. Another mistake. My mom hadn't been to a health store since she got sick. "Which one?" he pressed. "The one on Maple Street," I said, naming a store at random. "That closed down 6 months ago." We stared at each other. He knew I was lying. I knew he knew. But neither of us said it out loud. "Get some sleep," he finally said. "You look exhausted." I went to my room but didn't sleep. I sat up all night, door locked, chair wedged under the handle. My phone was in my hand, ready to call 911 if I heard footsteps outside my door. But they never came. 2 days later, the test results arrived by email. I opened them in my car, parked behind a grocery store 3 miles from home. The blood work showed everything. Benzodiazepines at toxic levels. Sedatives that had no business being in her system. Compounds that matched exactly what I'd researched. My hand shook as I forwarded the results to my email, my cloud storage, my best friend's email. Anywhere I could think of to keep them safe. Then I called the police. The officer who answered sounded bored until I explained what I'd found. Then his tone changed. He transferred me to a detective in the financial crimes unit. I spent an hour on the phone explaining everything. The messages I'd seen, my mom's condition, the test results. I sent them everything I had. "This is serious," the detective said. "We'll need to bring your mother in for questioning, and we'll need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement." "What about my dad?" I asked. "And my uncle and Dr. Harrison?" "We'll handle them," he said. "But right now we need to make sure your mother is safe. Is there somewhere she can stay tonight? Away from your father?" I thought of my aunt. My mom's sister lived 2 hours away. We weren't close, but she'd take Mom in if I explained the situation. I can bring her to my aunt's house, I said. Do it, he said. And don't tell your father where she is. I drove home with my pulse racing. My dad's car was in the driveway. I'd hoped he'd still be at work, giving me time to pack Mom's things and leave, but he was home early. Inside, I found him in the kitchen with my mom. She was sitting at the table while he prepared her afternoon medications. The same routine he'd followed for months. The same poison he'd been feeding her. Don't take those, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. They both looked at me, my mom confused, my dad alert. Excuse me? He said. Mom, don't take those pills. They're making you sick. My mom looked between us, uncertain. My dad's expression remained neutral, but I saw his hand tighten around the pill bottle. Your daughter seems to be having some kind of episode, he said to my mom gently. Maybe we should call Dr. Harrison. I called the police instead, I said. They have Mom's blood work. They know what you've been doing. For the first time, I saw my dad's composure crack. His face went pale, then red. You did what? I took Mom to get tested. Her blood is full of sedatives. Drugs you and Uncle have been giving her. The police are coming. My mom was looking at me like I was speaking another language, but my dad understood perfectly. You stupid girl, he hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Saved Mom's life, I said, moving to her side. Come on, Mom. We're leaving. He grabbed my arm. His grip was tight enough to bruise. You're not taking her anywhere, he said. That's when I heard the sirens. My dad heard them too. His head snapped toward the window, where police cars were pulling into our driveway. 2 of them, lights flashing. He let go of my arm and backed away. I saw him calculating, trying to figure out what story to tell. But the evidence was already in motion. The blood tests, my statement, the investigation into the financial records. The officers knocked on the door. I answered it, my legs barely holding me up. I'm Detective Rodriguez, one of them said, showing his badge. We spoke on the phone. Is your mother here? I nodded, stepping aside. 4 officers entered our home. My dad stood in the kitchen doorway, his lawyer face sliding into place. What's this about? He asked calmly. We need to speak with your wife, Detective Rodriguez said. And we have some questions for you as well. What happened next felt like watching a movie. Officers questioning my mom in the living room while I sat beside her, holding her hand. Her confusion as they asked about her medications, her doctors, her symptoms. My dad being read his rights in the kitchen, his face going from confident to panicked as they placed him in handcuffs. You can't do this, he kept saying. I'm an attorney. I know my rights. I want my lawyer. You'll have plenty of time to call your lawyer from the station, Detective Rodriguez said. They took him out through the front door. Our neighbors watched from their yards as my father was put into a police car. The man everyone thought was so devoted to his sick wife, being arrested for slowly poisoning her. My uncle was arrested at his pharmacy an hour later. Dr. Harrison was picked up at his office, mid-appointment with a patient. The news spread through our town like wildfire. The next few weeks were chaos. My mom was hospitalized for detox, her body slowly clearing the drugs that had been poisoning her. I stayed with her every day, watching her become more lucid, more herself. The doctor said she might make a full recovery. The damage wasn't permanent. The first real conversation we had, she cried for 2 hours straight. Not because she was sad, but because she could finally think clearly enough to understand what had been done to her. I thought I was losing my mind, she kept saying. I thought I was dying. You're not, I told her, holding her hand. You're going to be okay. How long have you known? She asked. I told her everything. Finding the phone, the messages, my suspicions over the months, the research I'd done, the test I'd arranged, every step I'd taken to save her. You could have been hurt, she said, if your father had known what you were planning. I know, but I couldn't just watch him kill you. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. You're braver than I ever was, she whispered. The investigation expanded. Police found the financial trail my dad and uncle had created. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, property transfers that hadn't been finalized, a whole web of fraud and conspiracy that went beyond just my mom's poisoning. They found Cynthia's involvement too. Text messages between her and my dad, planning their future together. She hadn't known about the poisoning, but she'd known my dad was married. She'd been complicit in the affair, encouraging him to handle his wife's situation. One of the worst parts came when police interviewed our friends and neighbors. People who'd watched my dad care for my mom, who'd praised his devotion. Several admitted they'd thought my mom's illness was convenient for my dad, that he seemed happier lately, more energized. But no one had said anything, no one had questioned it. People see what they want to see, Detective Rodriguez told me during one of my interviews. Your father played his role perfectly. Concerned husband, respected lawyer, pillar of the community. Even if someone suspected something, who would they tell? Who would believe them? The trial came 6 months later. My mom was there, healthy enough to testify. So was I. We sat in that courtroom and told our story to a jury who looked increasingly horrified. My dad's lawyer tried to paint me as a troubled daughter with mental health issues. Tried to suggest I'd misunderstood innocent messages, that my mom's illness was real and my dad had been trying to help. But the blood tests didn't lie. The financial records didn't lie. Dr. Harrison's falsified reports were exposed, showing years of malpractice that went beyond just my mom. He'd been covering up mistakes, taking bribes, falsifying records for other doctors. My dad and uncle's case opened a whole investigation into medical fraud at the practice. The prosecution called expert witnesses, toxicologists who explained exactly what the drugs in my mom's system would do, financial experts who traced the money my dad and uncle had hidden. Even Cynthia testified, given immunity in exchange for cooperation. She described how my dad had told her my mom was difficult, unwilling to let him be happy, how he'd promised they'd be together soon, once he'd handled things. Did you ever ask how he planned to handle things? The prosecutor asked. No, Cynthia admitted, her voice small. I didn't want to know. My mom's testimony was the most powerful. She described the months of confusion, of feeling her mind slip away, of trusting my dad to help her, to find answers, while he was the one causing her decline. Did you ever suspect your husband? The prosecutor asked. Never, my mom said. He was my partner for 20 years, the father of my child. I trusted him completely. And how do you feel now? My mom looked directly at my dad. Betrayed, violated, like I never really knew him at all. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the 4 women stood and read the verdict. Guilty, on all counts. My dad got 18 years. My uncle got 15. Dr. Harrison got 20, plus his medical license permanently revoked. Cynthia lost her job and had to move out of state, her name ruined in our community. The judge, during sentencing, said something that stuck with me. You took advantage of the trust that exists in families, in medicine, in the legal system. You betrayed not just your wife, but every person who believes that the people who are supposed to protect us actually will. That betrayal cannot be tolerated. My mom and I sold the house. Too many bad memories in those walls. We bought a smaller place on the other side of town, somewhere that felt safe. Fresh start for both of us. She went back to work part-time at her marketing company. Her business partner had kept things running while she was sick, and now she was slowly rebuilding her reputation. The creative spark I remembered from my childhood was coming back. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since before she married my dad. I watched her transform over the months. The fog lifted completely. Her sense of humor returned. She started making plans again, thinking about the future instead of just surviving each day. I went back to school, finished my degree in criminal justice. The experience with my mom had shown me how easily the system could fail people, how predators could hide in plain sight wearing expensive suits and respectable titles. My thesis was about medical abuse and how to identify it. My professor called it the best work she'd seen in 15 years of teaching. 1 year after the trial, my mom and I were having coffee in our new kitchen when she reached across the table and took my hand. I should have listened to you sooner, she said. All those times you said something felt wrong. I thought I was just being paranoid. You were being drugged, I reminded her. You couldn't think clearly. But you could, she said. You saved my life. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't have to thank me, I said. You're my mom. She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. The same eyes that used to be so foggy and confused were now clear and focused. I thought I was losing my mind, she whispered. Every day I felt myself slipping away, forgetting things, losing time, not recognizing my own thoughts. I was terrified. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. No, I do, she said. I need to, because I want you to understand something. When I was at my worst, when I could barely remember my own name, I still knew one thing with absolute certainty. What's that? That you loved me. Every time I woke up confused in a hospital, you were there. Every doctor's appointment, every bad day, you never left. Even when I didn't recognize you, I felt safe because you were there. I felt my own tears starting. Of course I was there. Where else would I be? A lot of daughters would have believed their father, she said, would have accepted the doctor's diagnoses, the medications, the explanations. You didn't. You questioned everything. You trusted your instincts even when everyone else told you that you were wrong. She was right. My dad's lawyer had tried to use that against me in trial, called me paranoid, delusional, desperate for attention. But I'd known something was wrong. I'd felt it in my gut, that sick feeling every time I watched my dad give my mom her pills. I learned it from you, I said. You always taught me to trust myself, to question things that don't make sense. My mom laughed, a sound I'd missed for so long. Did I? I don't remember being that wise. You were? You are. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking our coffee. Outside the window, birds were singing in the garden my mom had started planting. She said growing things made her feel alive again, watching something bloom under her care. What about you? She asked eventually. How are you really doing with all of this? I considered the question. Therapy had helped. Processing the betrayal and trauma of discovering my own father was trying to kill my mother. Processing the guilt I felt for not seeing it sooner. The anger at a system that almost let him get away with it. I'm getting there, I said honestly. Some days are harder than others. I still have nightmares sometimes about finding that phone. About what would have happened if I hadn't. But you did, my mom said firmly. That's what matters. Do you ever think about him? I asked. About Dad? Her expression darkened slightly. Sometimes. Usually when I'm angry. He took 8 months of my life, made me doubt my own mind, made me think I was dying. He is dying, I said quietly. In prison, slowly. We'd heard through the grapevine that my dad wasn't adjusting well to prison life. A man used to country clubs and expensive restaurants, now sleeping on a concrete bunk and eating food from a tray. He'd filed multiple appeals, all denied. Good, my mom said without hesitation. I don't wish him well. Is that terrible? No, I said. It's honest. My therapist had told me that forgiveness wasn't required, that some betrayals were too deep, too calculated to ever move past. What my dad had done wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a deliberate, sustained attempt to erase my mom from existence. The doorbell rang. My mom went to answer it while I cleared our coffee cups. I heard her laughing with someone at the door, her voice light and happy. The doorbell had become a regular occurrence. Friends stopping by, neighbors bringing casseroles, her business partner dropping off files. People who actually cared about her, not people who were plotting against her. She came back with a delivery, flowers from her sister, thanking her for coming to visit last weekend. My mom had reconnected with her family, relationships my dad had slowly isolated her from over the years. Another manipulation I hadn't seen until after. I have news, my mom said, arranging the flowers in a vase. I've been thinking about writing a book. About what happened? About survival. about recognizing abuse, even when it comes from someone you trust, about the warning signs people miss. That's a great idea, I said, meaning it. I want to help other women who might be going through something similar, to let them know they're not crazy, that gaslighting is real, that medical abuse happens. She'd found her purpose in the aftermath, turned her trauma into something that could help others. I was proud of her. My phone buzzed. A text from the prosecutor's office. They wanted me to speak at a conference about financial elder abuse and medical fraud. My mom's case had become a landmark example of how these crimes could happen, even in seemingly perfect families. Are you going to do it? My mom asked, reading over my shoulder. I think so, if it helps even one person recognize what's happening to them. We're quite a pair, my mom said, smiling, turning our worst experience into something good. Trying to, anyway. That night, after my mom went to bed, I sat in my room and pulled out the journal my therapist had recommended, writing down my feelings, processing the year we'd been through. I thought about the girl I'd been when I found that phone. Scared, uncertain, not sure if anyone would believe her. I thought about the choice I'd made to trust my instincts anyway, to fight for my mom even when it seemed hopeless. I thought about my dad, sitting in a prison cell, probably still convinced he'd done nothing wrong, probably still angry at me for exposing him. In his mind, he'd been the victim of an ungrateful daughter who didn't understand how the world worked. But I understood perfectly. I understood that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a respected attorney in a three-piece suit. Sometimes it looks like a friendly uncle who owns a pharmacy. Sometimes it looks like a doctor with 30 years of experience. Sometimes evil looks exactly like the people you're supposed to trust most. The phone that had started everything was evidence now, locked away in a police storage facility. But I didn't need it anymore. I had my memories, my testimony, and the satisfaction of knowing my mom was alive because I'd refused to look away from the truth. 5 years later, I was walking across a stage to receive my law degree when I saw my mom in the audience, cheering louder than anyone else. She'd started her own consulting firm, helping businesses recognize and prevent fraud. She'd written 2 books, become a sought-after speaker on corporate abuse and medical ethics. We'd both built new lives from the ashes of what my dad had tried to destroy. And we'd done it together, the way family was supposed to work. Not through manipulation and control, but through love and support, and the fierce determination to protect each other. That night, we celebrated at her favorite restaurant, the same place my dad had once taken clients trying to impress them with his money and status. But we weren't there to impress anyone. We were there because my mom loved their tiramisu, and because we'd earned the right to celebrate our victories. I'm proud of you, she said, raising her glass of wine. I'm proud of us, I corrected, clinking my glass against hers. We ate and laughed and planned my future. Law school graduation, job interviews, the apartment I was looking at closer to the city, normal conversations about normal things, the kind of evening we'd almost lost forever. As we left the restaurant, I saw a man across the street who looked like my uncle. Same build, same walk. My heart rate spiked before I realized it couldn't be him. He was still in prison. Would be for another 10 years at least. My mom noticed my reaction. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Just thought I saw someone. She nodded, understanding without me having to explain. We both still had those moments. Flashbacks to the fear, the uncertainty, the period when we didn't know who to trust. But we were okay. More than okay. We were free in a way we'd never been, even before we knew we were trapped. The epilogue to our story came 2 years after that, when I was working as a prosecutor in the district attorney's office. A case came across my desk that felt familiar. A woman whose husband was slowly isolating her, controlling her medications, making her doubt her own mind. I recognized the pattern immediately. The same tactics my dad had used, just in a different family. I took the case personally, built an airtight prosecution that resulted in another conviction, another woman freed from a nightmare she didn't even know she was living. After the trial, the woman approached me in the courthouse hallway. Thank you, she said, tears streaming down her face. You saved my life. I thought about my mom, about the choice I'd made to trust my instincts, about how one decision to look at a hidden phone had changed everything. You saved yourself, I told her, by being brave enough to speak up. But I knew the truth. We all save each other. By refusing to look away, by trusting our instincts, by fighting for the people we love even when it seems impossible. That's what family really means. Not the DNA you share, not the last name on your birth certificate. It's the people who show up, who fight for you, who refuse to let you disappear into someone else's nightmare. My mom and I had learned that lesson the hardest way possible, but we'd learned it. And now we spent our lives making sure other people didn't have to learn it alone. The woman from my case, her name was Patricia, became someone I checked in with regularly. She'd filed for divorce, moved to a different state, started rebuilding her life the same way my mom had. Sometimes she'd called just to talk, to reassure herself that the progress she was making was real, that she wasn't imagining her recovery the way her husband had made her imagine her illness. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, she told me during one call. Like, maybe I'm still confused, maybe I'm still sick. You're not, I said firmly. That's what they do. They make you doubt yourself so completely that even after you're free, you still question your own mind. How long until it stops? I thought about my mom, who still sometimes woke up panicked, checking to make sure she was really okay, who still occasionally asked me if her memories of being sick were accurate, or if the drugs had distorted everything. I don't know if it ever completely stops, I admitted, but it gets easier. You learn to trust yourself again. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Your mom is lucky to have you, she finally said. I'm lucky to have her too. After we hung up, I sat at my desk thinking about luck. How many women didn't have someone watching closely enough to notice when something was wrong? How many people were being slowly poisoned, medically abused, financially drained, and no one was paying attention? The statistics were terrifying. Elder abuse, medical abuse, financial exploitation. It happened more than anyone wanted to admit, and most of it went unreported, unprosecuted, invisible. My mom's book had sold well. She got letters every week from people who'd recognized themselves in her story, women who'd thought they were losing their minds, only to discover they were being deliberately harmed by people they trusted. One letter stuck with me, a woman in her 60s whose adult children were drugging her to get control of her estate. She'd read my mom's book and recognized the same pattern, got herself tested, called the police, escaped before it was too late. "Your mother's story saved my life," she wrote. "I was ready to give up. I thought the confusion was just old age." But something about her experience rang true. I knew I had to fight. My mom framed that letter, hung it in her office as a reminder of why she did what she did, why she spoke at conferences, wrote articles, consulted with law enforcement about recognizing these crimes. Finding my dad's secret phone was devastating, but it was also the beginning of something better, a life built on truth instead of lies, love instead of manipulation, freedom instead of control. And every single day, I was grateful I'd had the courage to read those messages, to trust what I knew to be true, even when everyone else told me I was wrong. Because being right about something terrible is better than being wrong about someone you love, and saving someone's life is worth any price you have to pay. Years later, when I had my own daughter, my mom was there in the hospital room. She held my baby with tears in her eyes, and I saw the weight of everything we'd survived reflected in her face. "She's beautiful," my mom whispered. "She is," I agreed. "What are you going to name her?" I'd thought about this for months. Considered family names, meaningful names, names that sounded pretty. But in the end, there was only one choice. "Hope," I said. "Her name is Hope." My mom understood immediately, because that's what we'd held on to when everything else was falling apart. The hope that truth would win, that justice would prevail, that love was stronger than betrayal. And it was. It really was.